Hello, my name's Gavin, this is Genre Books, and for the fourth week in a row I'm not looking at books, but instead pieces based on books, specifically the books of Agatha Christie, more specifically depictions of Miss Marple. I'm trying to find the best Marple in the Marple cinematic universe. I've been to the old Soviet Union, the old West Germany, the Caribbean of the 1980s, Hollywood, and ITV. But this week I travel east with two radically different departures for Miss Marple. Last week I had a problem in choosing between Geraldine McEwen and Julia Mackenzie because, although their depictions are different, the series in which they are portraying Miss Marple was the same. It's the same channel, the same production company, the same group of people. They just had the lead actress swapped out. This week I have a very different problem in choosing because the depictions are so radically different. Both the adaptations are foreign. Both the adaptations are from the Far East, and both are produced in the 21st century. That is, I think, the only similarities that you'll find. First, I'll be looking at Agatha Christie's great detectives Poirot and Marple. It's a bit of a mouthful of a title, but this is the only animated Miss Marple that I can find. Certainly the only Japanese anime Miss Marple. This anime ran for 39 episodes during 2004 and 2005. It was broadcast on NHK in Japan. It was produced by OLM, Oriental Light and Magic, an anime studio that's been around for 35 years, and it's given us, well, I had a look at a list. There are a lot of series that they have given us, only some of which I have to admit, being a complete novice with anime, only a few of which I recognise the titles. But they did Berserk, Guyver, the bio-boosted armour. They also produced a number of series based on toys and games such as Tamagotchi, Yokai Watch and Beyblade. And if those names don't resonate with you, how about Pac-Man and Pokemon? They also had a number of series with fantastically long titles, or titles that translate into English in a very long-winded way. The favourite one I found was Life with an Ordinary Guy Who Reincarnated as a Total Fantasy Knockout. I think that's a remake of Walker, Texas Ranger. But amongst all of this, a series retelling the stories of Agatha Christie through her most famous protagonists, Poirot and Marple, is a little bit of a departure. There are some changes from the books and the stories, but there are not as many changes as you may think. But we'll talk about those changes and differences first. Poirot and Marple exist in the same social circles, in the same universe, but like the books and the stories, they do not meet. So they remain faithful even when sort of mixing the general world in which the stories are being told. There are some characters which bring the worlds together. Two characters specifically, so let's look at those. First and foremost is Maybelle West. She is the 16-year-old daughter of Raymond West. Raymond West is Miss Marple's nephew. She doesn't exist in the books. There is another character called Mabel, but this is not the same character. And she acts as the narrative bridge between the two. Obviously, she is blood relation of Miss Marple and goes to visit Miss Marple at St Mary Mead on her time off from work, and her work is as an assistant to Hercule Poirot. Because this is a Japanese anime, there's also an animal, and this is a duck. You'll see him in the title sequence of the anime, and I'll be honest, he doesn't add a lot to the stories. Fortunately, he doesn't talk. Other changes are cosmetic. There are some name changes. Hercule Poirot has a colleague on the police force who helps on a couple of novels called Inspector Japp, Japp. They've changed his name, understandably. But by and large, what struck me is how much they have stayed true to the source material. All of the episodes are based on short stories, which comprise one episode, or novels which are stretched over 3 or 4 episodes. Unlike the ITV series from last week, the solutions aren't changed, the culprits aren't changed. So this is something, even in a cartoon, that might please the purists. The depictions of Poirot and Marple themselves seem to be based on Suchet and Hickson. That's no bad thing, and you want to make these types relatable and recognizable by the audience in Japan. But it is a little bit limiting from that perspective. There is no exploration of the character of Marple. Let's return to the subject of tea, which I got quite exercised about in the first video in this little series. Obviously, Japan has its own tradition of tea. Pains me to say it, but their tradition of tea is a lot longer than the one we have in England. But it's nice to see tea being so important to this Miss Marple, which it is. In fact, Marple here keeps her interests to the Marple staples: gardening, knitting, tea, and crime. There is murder here in the anime, but it's on the non-gory side. And obviously, with the short stories, there is not always a murder, there's just a case to be solved. The episode I watched was based on a short story. We're just trying to find a missing inheritance. I didn't watch all 39 episodes. And I didn't watch anything with Poirot in it because I'll come to Poirot at some point in the future. Miss Marple is here played or voiced by Kaoru Yakigusa, who had a long and illustrious career in Japanese cinema and on television. She was in Madame Butterfly. She was in the Samurai trilogy with Toshihiro Mifune, Snow Country, even a science fiction with The Human Vapor. On TV, she was in a big budget remake of Tokyo Story, and she was also in Hana no Shogai from 1963, the first of the big NHK tiger dramas, which are these big, lavish period dramas. Starting in the 1950s, she was active in Japanese cinema and television until she died in 2019 at the age of 88. She plays a more kindly version of Marple than perhaps we've seen so far. There is less of the slightly hidden glee at the crime that she finds around her. There is much more of a familial caring aspect in her relationship with Maybelle. I don't think she even acknowledges the duck's existence. But it's a solid portrayal of an instantly recognisable Miss Marple. it is a bit difficult to gauge the performance just on the voice and in translation at the same time. I will be watching more of these though in the future. Not straight away, but I think maybe as I read some of the short stories I might go back and see how they were tackled in the anime. They are, as I've said, surprisingly authentic renditions of the stories and the novels. I remain unsure about the duck. But on the plus side, this series also has a complete earworm of a theme tune. It is a quick trip across the sea of Japan and a quick hop forward 15 years to the next depiction of Marple. And this one is so radically different, I'm not entirely sure where to begin. It is a K-drama or a Koreanovela. This is a Korean television series, something which I am even less familiar with than anime. This series is Ms. Ma Nemesis, and it is from 2018. It ran for 32 episodes, of which I've only watched the first 2. As the title suggests, there is a basis here on the Agatha Christie novel Nemesis, a very loose basis. But during the run of the show, it also incorporates retellings of The Moving Finger, The Body in the Library, A Murder is Announced, and The Mirror Cracked. But the episodes that I saw covered none of that. It was literally setting up the premise ready to go for the main body of the series. And it is so different. So Miss Ma Ji-won is a mystery writer. There's your first difference. But she only becomes a mystery writer to the audience at the end of that second episode. She starts as an escapee from a psychiatric detention centre where she has been erroneously imprisoned and incarcerated for the murder of her daughter. Of course, she didn't do it. It wouldn't be much of a series if she had. Ms. Ma is traumatized, obviously, by the murder of her daughter and for her incarceration, but she's used her time in detention to become a psychological profiler, a novelist, and a martial artist. It's about as far from St. Mary Mead as I think you could possibly get. The cast of the show is, for the most part, unknown to me. One of the minor policeman parts is played by CNU, who is apparently or was a big thing in K-pop as a member of a boy band. K-pop, something I know even less than K-drama, which is something I know even less than anime, which is something I don't know very well at all. As I say, the cast largely unknown to me, but Miss Ma is known. I gave up on Lost some point during series 2, but I did recognise Yoongjin Kim, who played Sun. She is here as Miss Ma. I'm going to hopefully not call her Miss Marple by accident. Kim has been active in South Korean and American productions since I think 1999, and she is taking the lead in this series. She does a good job with the character here. In these first episodes, it is a whirlwind of despair, grief, resolution, anger, and all sorts. She has become cold, calculating. Again, this is just such a radical departure from what you might expect from a Miss Marple recreation. I am interested to watch some more of these, because at the end of this second episode, we have the premise set up and ready. She is now ensconced in this small village in South Korea and is known as a mystery writer and someone who can help solve local, less traumatic crimes. It promises a tonal shift from some of the high octane action, over flashy cinematography and anguish of those first two episodes. There are hints as to what the series may incorporate during its run, and I have to say the way in which I divined that is something that gives me a little bit of a pause and perhaps a worry for how this might turn out. The main cop is gritty, moral, uncompromising. He's surrounded by some comedic incompetence, and the depiction of all of the other law enforcement as either corrupt officials, ass kissers, or just basic morons is jarring, doesn't fit with the story going on of a woman who has devoted her life to find her child's killer. So quite how we are going to transition from that high energy opening burst of episodes to life in a quiet South Korean village remains to be seen. Like I say, this depiction is about as far tonally and geographically from St Mary Mead as I think you're likely to find. But I do like that you are still able, 90 years after her first appearance, to interpret Miss Marple in such a variety of different ways. And I think I have to give the decision for this week's depiction to Kim. It's such a radical departure that I don't think there can be any comparative basis with the anime, so I'm a little bit sorry for the anime in that respect, because the anime is in itself a bold choice to recreate the Christie stories so faithfully. But I'm going to go with the experimentation here of the K-drama. I'll be revisiting both of these in the future. Perhaps not in a great rush to do so with either, but I think as I've read more Christie, it will hopefully allow me to appreciate them even more. Next week is the last weekend in March, the last weekend of March Mystery Madness, and therefore the last episode in this little Marple cinematic universe series. And we are ending in England with two British theatrical dames going head to head. Dame Margaret Rutherford and Dame Joan Hickson. And then we'll be deciding, out of all 10 interpretations of Marple, which I think is best. But until then,